Simon Sinek has famously said, leadership is not about being in charge, it is about taking care of people who are in your charge. Today's session is on inclusive leadership, what it means to be an inclusive leader, and why inclusive leadership and the 5 traits that I want to talk about are critical for people who truly want to take care of people in their charge. We'll start today's session with a bit of self-reflection. I'd love for you to pause the video after I share these instructions and take a piece of paper or take your laptop, write down the things I ask you to reflect on, and then continue the video to learn more about inclusive leadership. You'll notice that we circle back to this first exercise at the end. All right, so with your laptop and paper ready, I want you to reflect on 1 or 2 powerful leaders that you have had in your life. It could be a professor, it could be a manager, it could be the CEO of a company you've worked with, but think about 1 or 2 people who've really stood out to you as amazing leaders. And as you think about them, write down some of the top characteristics that made them amazing leaders. So pause the video and just take time to do that now. At this point, you should have 1 or 2 names, and under each name, you should have identified a couple of characteristics that you felt made these people amazing leaders. Now let's talk about inclusive leadership, what makes leadership inclusive, and why it's so important. In this session, I'm going to be talking about 5 traits that I feel all inclusive leaders should be adopting because they're so important. And I'd love for you to note for yourself, if you think of scoring it out of 5, for each one of these, pause the video after each one and ask yourself, how would I score myself on this? Would it be a 1, meaning I have a lot to learn? Would it be a 5, meaning I think I got this down really well, it's one of my strengths? And then at the end, we can reflect on what did you notice about your scoring and your self-reflection on them. So let's talk about the 5 characteristics that I think make somebody an inclusive leader. Self-awareness, empathy, open-mindedness, adaptability, and accountability. Let's look at all 5. Let's talk about what the research tells us for each of them, and let's reflect on how we do on each of these. Self-awareness is the first step in becoming an inclusive leader. By acknowledging our strengths and being aware of areas of improvement, we're able to see opportunities that we have to grow and adapt. Becoming aware of our biases and how our actions impact others enables us to adjust our behaviors and therefore create better outcomes for ourselves and those we work with. According to the Harvard Business Review 2022 article on why self-reflection makes you a better leader, leaders who employ self-reflection on a regular basis are 24% more likely to have higher performing teams. So this is critical to your ability to support teams and enable them to bring the best out in themselves. The second characteristic of an inclusive leader is being empathetic. Empathetic leaders employ the following things. They listen deeply, they care and take the perspectives of the people they're talking to about their concerns and their experiences and perspectives, and they act in a compassionate manner once they understand how that person is feeling, why that person is feeling that way, what is the perspective of that person. So empathy is more than just listening. It's listening to understand, it's really understanding, and it is taking compassionate action from that point of view. According to McKinsey's 2021 business case for empathetic leadership is linked to 60% higher employee satisfaction rates. Ultimately, empathetic leaders understand their team's perspectives. This builds trust and collaboration, and this in turn leads to higher engagement and higher contribution from their team members. So take a moment now to reflect on your ability to demonstrate empathetic leadership. Grade yourself from 1 to 5, 5 being, this is a great strength of mine. I know how to do this and I do it regularly. A third quality of an inclusive leader is open-mindedness. An open-minded leader seeks out different points of view and encourages different perspectives in setting goals, in ways of getting there, and in resolving conflict or problems. According to the Deloitte 2021 report on Inclusion Leads to Innovation, inclusive leaders are 50% more likely to have better outcomes because they seek diverse points of view and diverse input. Open-mindedness not only leads to better innovation because of new and different ideas, it also ensures that your team members feel valued and heard and have an opportunity to share their perspective even if it doesn't fit the mold. A fourth characteristic for inclusive leaders is accountability. Inclusive leaders hold themselves accountable and others accountable. And this is really important because it takes the language of inclusion and the values that we have and brings them to life on an ongoing basis. Gallup issued a piece on the power of accountability in leadership in 2022. And in that piece, they showed that leaders who are accountable, who hold themselves and their team members accountable, are 40% more likely to have higher levels of trust. By holding ourselves as leaders and our teams to account, we build trust and collaboration, and we also ensure that our values of inclusion and respect come to life. Take a moment to reflect on yourself and how you show up when it comes to being accountable, holding yourself accountable and holding your team accountable for inclusive values, for respect, for ways of working that you say is important to the organization. All right, the fifth and final characteristic of an inclusive leader is that they are adaptable. Adaptability means that we seek to listen and understand the perspectives of our team members and that we adjust our way of doing things to respond to and meet the needs of our team and of a changing context. Bain and Company did a research piece in 2022 on the importance of adaptability in leadership, and they found that leaders that were more adaptable were 30% more effective in driving team performance than leaders that were not adaptable. Adaptability ensures that we are meeting changing demands and needs and addressing anything that is coming up along the way so that we can best support our teams for the best outcomes possible. Again, take a few minutes to just reflect on your level of adaptability. Do you check in on a regular basis? Do you seek to understand what is changing or going on and how you can evolve? And do you actually adapt your strategies to meet the evolving needs of your team and of the goals you're trying to achieve? Okay, so we have explored 5 really important characteristics of inclusive leaders: self-awareness, empathy, open-mindedness, accountability, and adaptability. These are absolutely important for any inclusive leader to be effective. And we heard all the different statistics and research that shows that this kind of leadership leads to people feeling more valued and heard, needs being met, strategies being adjusted so that better outcomes come out of it, higher rates of employee satisfaction, higher rates of trust, better decision making. I mean, who wouldn't want to be an inclusive leader if it meant so many positive outcomes as a result of how you lead? We also had an opportunity for each of those 5 to just take a moment to check in with ourselves. How are we doing on them? And is there an opportunity for us to do more or build more strength in those areas? I hope this gives you at least one area that you can identify that you feel there's more work for you to do on. Now, one way to do work in any of these areas is to actually ask for feedback from your team. When I coach senior leaders, that is one of the things that I encourage them to do, is during a staff meeting say, I've been thinking about or I've been learning about inclusive leadership. Here's what I learned about the 5 different traits. I know where I'm scoring myself, but I would love to hear from you from these 5 traits. Which are the ones that you think I'm really good at? And what thoughts do you have around where I could be a better leader and how I might be able to do that? Remembering that leaders, even though we are leaders, are there to support our team. And so we also need the feedback and we also need to work on our ability to support them as well. All right, now let's go back to that sheet of paper that you started with, looking at the 1 or 2 leaders that you identified from your past and the characteristics that you also identified for each of them that you valued. And I want you to now take the 5 characteristics that we talked about: empathy, open-mindedness, self-awareness, accountability, adaptability. I want you to take those and just look at the list that you identified for your leaders and think about how many of the 5 did those leaders practice, because I bet you that many of those 5 were present in how those amazing leaders led. And this leads me to my final thought, which is that inclusive leadership is not for just leaders. Inclusive leadership and all of the 5 elements that I shared actually apply to everybody in an organization. It doesn't matter whether you're responsible for a team or not. You can be inclusive, you can be empathetic, you can be open-minded, you can be adjusting in your ways of responding to the changing dynamics within your team or your work. There's many ways that all of us, whether or not we have a leadership title, can exercise these 5 qualities and build our own ability to be better leaders in whatever space we show up in every day. So I hope this was really helpful for you. If you enjoyed it and found it useful, please like the video below, share it with your community, and of course, as always, if you're interested in a live or virtual session around inclusive leadership for your organization, it could be for all staff. I would love to be able to run a session like that for you and to really help everybody, not just the leadership, see that these 5 qualities can have huge impacts in an organization and a team when we all embrace them fully. Well, that's it from me for today. I look forward to seeing you at the next session.